Thank you all for choosing to join me here this evening. I'm very much looking forward to teaching you all this incredible tool for transformation. My name is Laurel Van Workum, and I'm a well-being coach and a hypnotherapist. I've been doing this work for almost 4 years now, and it has truly transformed my own personal life and the lives of my clients. I was someone who I used to practice a lot of negative self-talk. I would say, I tended to be a bit more pessimistic. And through these tools and the learning of them, I've really been able to change my life, to absolutely transform my life. So we'll talk about a few different ways to use self-hypnosis today. Also go into what hypnosis is. I know a few of you have been to my group hypnosis sessions, so you have a little bit of background info on that. And I will open it up for questions at the end. So since we are a relatively small group, if you have any questions throughout, feel free to raise your hand. I'll also ask for some participation as we go. So hopefully you're here to participate and get involved, and we'll make this an interactive journey. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about the power of thought. Can everyone see the slides? Perfect. Okay, thank you. So we all know, right? We've all heard that positive thinking is extremely powerful. Likely you've heard that since you were a child. And even if this is a concept that you've been familiar with your whole entire life, there's still a chance that you might not be employing the power of positive thinking as much as you could. Raise your hand if you find yourself sometimes thinking negative thoughts or speaking negatively to yourself. Okay, sure. Everyone's got their hand raised, everyone's nodding their heads, right? So if we create our own reality through the thoughts that we have in our mind, then you can imagine that if your thoughts are positive, your reality will be more positive. And if your thoughts are negative, then your reality is more likely to be negative, right? We each possess our own unique filters through which we see the world. And these filters are our beliefs, they're our experiences, they're, the senses that are most dominant for us. They're this accumulation of knowledge and experience that we've gathered through our life. And so every time that we are in an experience or in an event in our life, we are interpreting that event through our own internal filters. Okay. And in doing that, I know that even if all of us were in the same exact moment, sharing a moment together, we would all perceive it very differently. Okay. Now, among these filters are the filters that we often call negative or positive, right? How we choose to perceive something, our own perception of an event. So, what if I were to tell you that you are most suggestible to yourself? What does that mean? We are constantly influenced by those around us throughout each day. Something that someone says or does might affect us. However, at the end of the day, we are most suggestible to ourselves. So the way that we speak to ourselves is extremely important. From a standpoint of hypnosis, I could put each of you into a trance right now, and it would likely be quite effective, but not as effective as whatever it is that you're telling yourself on a regular basis throughout each day. So let's talk a little bit about hypnosis, what it is, how it works. Who here has been hypnotized before? Phil? Okay, great. So you guys have a little bit of experience with this, so I'll keep it short, but making sure that we're all in an understanding of what hypnosis is. Hypnosis is a natural state that we each go in and out of on a regular basis. So throughout any given day, you will be in and out of various different trance states or states of hypnosis. Every single night as we fall asleep, when we're in that in-between realm between waking consciousness and sleeping consciousness, we go into hypnosis. And every morning as we wake up, we also go into hypnosis. If you're meditating, you're in a hypnotic state. Flow states are also a form of hypnosis. And any form of learning is also a form of hypnosis. Okay. Basically, hypnosis is any time when you've opened the mind to communicate with the subconscious. Okay. So anytime that you've dropped this critical filter, right, you're allowing your conscious mind to get out of the way so that you can absorb this information or whatever it is that's coming in to your subconscious mind. Okay. Now, the media, politicians, marketers use hypnosis. They use hypnotic techniques and language patterns to get us to buy, to get us to believe certain things on a daily basis, right? Often against our will. So this is happening all the time as well. But in the work that I do and in the work that I'm teaching here today, what we're doing is we're using that hypnotic trance state to reprogram our own subconscious minds to better serve us. Okay. Are there any questions so far? Okay, wonderful. So, as we talk about positive thinking and the power of thought, there's one other little tidbit that I want to share with you. And that is just the basic fact that studies have shown that positive thinking can be responsible for lowering stress, improving our immune system, and lowering our chances of premature death. So if you're not already convinced that positive thinking can change your life, improve it for the better, those are 3 other incredibly great reasons to improve the way that you talk to yourself. So let's get into that then. Okay. In order to achieve a more positive self-talk, we need to understand what negative self-talk is. So, how does negative self-talk come up? Well, first, I'd like to ask each and every one of you to take a moment and think about maybe some common things, common negative things that you often say to yourself. And if you'd like to share them in the chat, I'll invite you to do so. You'll never find your purpose or what you're really seeking. That was dumb. That was stupid. You're not so creative. Yeah, these hurt. They hit hard. You're not confident enough. You're being too lazy. Okay. Right. So these are several examples. And let's talk about the different ways that negative self-talk displays. Raj says, you're never going to be good enough. Yeah, that's a common one as well. Sure. So the first form of negative self-talk is self-blaming and shaming. Okay, so we have some examples of this here in what you've provided, right? It might be saying you're stupid. You're being too lazy. Yeah, I'm ugly. Or it could be, you should have done this, or you shouldn't have said that. That's another example of self-blaming and shaming. The next form is what we call catastrophizing. Okay. And this is when you treat things like they're the end of the world. Yeah. So, oh my God, it was the worst thing. That was the worst thing you possibly could have done. No, nobody is going to like you. I've ruined everything. The next one is perfectionism, right? So holding yourself to an impossibly high standard. Who's guilty of this one? This is one of mine. Yeah. Yeah. How often are we harder on ourselves than we are on others? And then there's personalizing, right? Taking personally something that actually has nothing to do with you. How about that? Yeah. Saying, oh, now they won't talk to me. I must have done something wrong. Wow, nobody's ever going to want to be my friend. Things like that can be examples of personalizing. Magnifying. This happens when we blow things completely out of proportion. Okay, we make something worse or bigger than it actually was. Next is filtering. And this is when we completely ignore or remove all of the good in a situation, right? Sometimes we focus so much on the bad or the negative that we forget about the good things that happen in a specific event or moment or relationship. Then there's polarizing, right? So this is seeing things in extremes. And in a negative perspective, seeing things as extremely bad. Okay. Next is overgeneralization. I hear this one a lot from my clients, using language like always or never, or every time, or, it's just the absolute worst might be another example. And the last one is minimization. Okay, so this is when you say, yeah, but, so yeah, it was a great day, but I wasn't feeling good. Or, yeah, that was a really nice, or I really tried hard, but ultimately I failed. Okay, so minimizing the good and focusing instead on the bad. Any questions about this list? Okay, great. So here are some examples. Okay. Here are some examples of some negative self-talk. Give you a moment to review those and take them in. And you'll see that a few of them are highlighted, right? So what is it about these two that are highlighted? Well, I'll go into those in a little bit more detail, okay? So the one right there in the middle, I'm trying my best. You might be confused as to why that is here. Is anyone confused by this one? Okay. All right. So the reason I put this here, it's not that this is necessarily negative language. It's just that it's not particularly strong language, right? So if you're always trying something, then you're never actually doing it. So if you think about the areas in your life where you say, you know, I'm trying my best, I'm trying to get better at this, I'm trying to create a new routine, that may seem nice and positive, but are you actually succeeding? Are you actually dedicating yourself to that thing? Are you actually doing what you said you were going to do? Are you really, truly showing up for yourself the best that you can? So I'll challenge each of you here that if you hear yourself using the word try, it's a great opportunity to replace it with a more action-oriented word. Okay. The other one that's in bold is I should be better at this. Okay. And I've put this one in bold because should is a word that we want to be careful with as well. Okay. Should implies that we're not accepting reality as it is. And when you're not accepting reality for what it is, you can't actually move into a place of change. You can't change reality until you accept what's in front of you. Okay, so if you hear yourself saying should, then the next question is, how can I accept that this is where I'm at right now? While, you know, also being aware of what I would prefer to have in the future. Okay. So looking at these questions, you might ask yourself, how do I reframe these? Okay. Now, the first step in reframing is to ask yourself, is this thought useful and is it true? Okay. So if a thought comes through your head and you notice, you're like, hey, that feels like a negative thought. I'm going to question it. Ask yourself, is this thought useful? And is it actually true? And then from there, I'll invite you to reframe it to be both of those things, both useful and true. So with that in mind, would anyone like to take a stab at reframing any of these examples? And I'll invite you to speak out loud if you'd like.
Sure.
All right, Rod.
I'm looking at the one that keeps staring at me, so I'll go with I should be better at this. Doesn't matter what the context of the this is.
No, if
Okay.
you have something in mind, you can always add to it if you'd like.
Well, it's more along the lines of I should be further along, which is the same thing. And to reframe it, I would say I'm exactly where I need to be. And I just have to continue to keep moving forward.
Beautiful. Yeah. That feels much more useful, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. It's action oriented.
Yeah.
Okay. Who else? Us, I see you smiling.
Ay, ay, ay. I think the one like this is all my fault. I think I will definitely would change that for maybe um, it's not my fault and I did my best as much as I could and I'm still doing my best. I'm not trying, I'm doing.
Mhm. But what if it was your fault?
Sorry?
What if it was your fault?
Oh, I I don't know.
Does anyone want to try from that perspective?
It's a hard one.
I can try it.
Okay.
Uh, if considering that it is my fault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, I did what I did. I take full responsibility. I just have to be willing to learn the lesson from it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Or perhaps I can take responsibility for my fault in this and learn from my mistakes, right? And Kata says in response to, I'm stupid, I can't do this, can change that to, I will do my best. Perfect. Any others? Anyone else want to try? One more. How about, does anyone want to try to reframe, I don't deserve love? No one? No takers?
I feel like it's difficult, but it would just be like I deserve love. I should just taking the don't out of there basically, but yeah, I'm capable of being loved or I deserve love or things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think with this one, we can go back to uh, something that we were talking about earlier, which is that oftentimes we're harder on ourselves than we are on others, right? So you might ask yourself, do you believe that everyone deserves love? Or do you believe that most people deserve love? And if the answer to that is yes, then, well, certainly you also deserve love, right? So maybe it's easier to say, well, everyone deserves love, myself included. And I see us, you put in the chat, I deserve all the love in the universe. Also a beautiful reframe. Great. Okay, so I'll go through a few examples for the rest of these. We have, if I don't get this job, my life will be over, right? Whoops, sorry, didn't mean to skip ahead. Give me a minute. My Zoom is not being very cooperative at the moment with my keyboard. Won't let me click. Sorry, guys, I don't know what's going on. One second. Okay, Winnie's requested that I go back to the negative self-talk slide. So we'll back it up, head back there for a moment. So that would be this one. And Winnie and everyone, I'll send out a handout after this as well. So it'll have all of these basic slides and you'll have them for future reference. Okay. May I move on? Okay. Perfect. Okay, so examples for the rest of these. We've got, I'm too fat. She's never going to like me. How about instead, I'd like to lose some weight. I think I'd be happier if I did. And then I'd be more confident to date. Or we have, I'm a failure. I'll never succeed. An alternative to that might be, I've learned a lot from my past failures, which will help me to succeed next time. This is all my fault. We talked through that one. I'm stupid. I can't do this. A great reframe for that might be, I can learn to do this. How about, if I don't get this job, my life will be over. A reframe for that might be, if I don't get this job, there's something better out there. Nobody likes me. What if instead we said, I'd like to make more friends? I'm ugly. No one loves me. I want to work on self-love so I can give and accept love freely. Okay, so if you want to continue the practice with this, when you receive the handout, you can go through these again and just write your own reframe under each of them. And that should help you so that as you're going through your day and you're working on reframing yourself, you already kind of have an idea of what a reframe could be for each of these different types of language patterns. So here's my challenge to each of you. Okay. I'd like to invite you to think of the common negative things that you say. And you've already got a leg up on this because you put them in the chat, or at least a few of them. But you can go ahead and make a list. You know, what are things that you tend to say to yourself? And how can you reframe those? And then, you know, as you go throughout your day, practice reframing yourself anytime that you have a negative thought. When I work with clients on this, usually I give them this assignment for a week, right? Because it's basically from one session to the next. But I always say, you know, that this is actually really a never-ending practice. This is a habit. So, you know, this is perhaps not hypnosis in the way that we like to think about it. But this practice is a crucial starting point for self-hypnosis. And it's actually probably even more powerful than any other technique that I can give you. So let's take 2 minutes now, and I'll invite you just to write down, you know, let's say maybe up to 10 common negative things that you say to yourself, and go ahead and reframe them. Okay. How was that? Everyone clear? Did anyone have a hard time? And if you did, would you be courageous enough to put it in the chat and have the group help you? There might be one that you got stuck on. Let's see here. Okay. I can't get this done. I'll never be able to hold down a full-time job without getting fired. And that's from Phil. And the attempt is, I think it could be, I can get things done. It will just take time to build up to full-time. Or I still haven't found what I'm passionate about. Yeah. What do you guys think about that? That sound good? Or do you have any suggestions? Got a thumbs up from Raj. Yeah, I think that's solid, Phil. It's too late for me to get what I want. Okay. Any suggestions from the group on how to reframe that one? It's too late for me to get what I want. Life has something better in store for me. There you go. What do you think of that, Raj? See a thumbs up? Yeah, sometimes we try to control everything, right? And maybe that's not our path. Okay, and then the next one was, what's the point of it all anyway? Can anyone think of a good reframe for that one? What's the point of it all anyway? How about for what's the point of it all anyway? Something along the lines of, I may not know what the point is or what life has in store, but I choose to trust and have faith. Or maybe it's, I create my own purpose in life through joy and excitement, or joy and connection. Did you take either of those, Raj?
What was that first one?
I may not know what the point of life is, but I trust and have faith.
And the second one?
And the second one was, I create my own purpose through joy and connection.
That one probably would resonate more.
Okay. From Catalina. No one will be interested in what I have to share. And the reframe is, maybe not everyone will be interested. There will always be someone who resonates with what I share. Yeah, I just got goosebumps reading that. Isn't that the truth? There are many talented people doing the same thing. Who's felt that one before? I know I have. And the reframe is, I have a unique way of doing things, and that's my value. I'm afraid to do it. The reframe, I will take small steps until I achieve it. Yeah, I like that one. Okay. Us says, everything is a new learning. Was that in response to one of these? Yeah, in response to Raj's, what's the point of it all anyway? Everything is a new learning. Okay. Awesome. All right, so that is reframing in a nutshell. Let's move on to what's next. How many people here have used affirmations or mantras before? No? Few? Okay, great. Did you find them useful? Were they effective? See a few head nods. See some questioning looks. Okay, great. So, how do affirmations or mantras work? Anyone have any ideas about that? About why they work or how they work? Unsure.
They can work if they're repeated with conviction, to reprogram your subconscious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what are the key elements? So you said repeated, so repetition, and conviction, right? Which goes back to what we're saying here, right? We are most suggestible to ourselves. So if you are suggesting something positive to yourself, well, the more conviction you put behind it, right? The more convincing you're being to your subconscious mind. And what allows you to convey that to the subconscious is actually the element of repetition. Okay, so repetition opens the subconscious mind, right? It gets the attention of the subconscious mind because our subconscious is made to look for patterns. And so the more that it sees or hears something, the more likely it is to believe it and to store it away. Okay, so repetition actually creates a trance state. And I can give you another example of that too, which is with music. Okay, so if you think about, like, maybe you're in a club and there's some really trancy electronic music on or something, and you find yourself all of a sudden you're just like taken to a different world, right? Like you're completely present, you're just like in the dance, lost in it, like in this state of flow. Well, that's a trance state, and that's created by the repetition of the beats within the music. Okay, and the same thing happens with spoken word. When you think of, for instance, like kirtan, which is Sanskrit devotional mantras that are sung in a group environment. If you've ever been to a kirtan and you look around you, everyone's just singing the same lines over and over again. And you can actually start to see that people are in a state of hypnosis as it's happening. So you can replicate that yourselves, either looking in the mirror at home, or as I'm about to suggest, first thing in the morning before you even open your eyes. Okay. So here's what I would like to suggest. Okay. This is a process. I don't want you to get lost in reading the details of this. But you can take a look at it really quickly. And then I'm going to go back here. So we'll talk through it first, and then you'll get that in the slides that I'll send to you after this. But remember, I mentioned at the beginning that when you fall asleep at night and when you wake up in the morning, you go into a state of hypnosis. So this basically means that anything that you suggest to yourself, either right before bed or immediately after waking up, is going to have more power and impact, okay? Because you're optimizing that state of hypnosis to communicate with your subconscious mind. So with that in mind, I recommend that each night before you go to bed, you write down your affirmation. Okay. Now you can have multiple affirmations if you like. But in order to get the most effect, I would suggest that you really choose one and work with it for a time, for at least a week, and maybe even up to a month. Okay. And then once you see the fruit of that labor, the progress in that one area, you can move on to another one. All right. Now, why do we write it down? Well, the language of the subconscious mind is symbols and emotions, and written language is a series of symbols. So, in writing out your affirmation in symbolic language, in writing, you are conveying it directly to your subconscious mind. And you're also conveying to your subconscious that it's important. It's important enough that you've put it in writing. You can type it in your phone, but it's not quite the same. It doesn't have quite the same effect. So write it down in a journal. Or I have a friend who is really into calligraphy. And so he likes to write his affirmations in calligraphy. So if you have an artistic outlet that you enjoy as well and translates to this, you can get creative with it. But write it down right before bed, literally just before you lay your head down on the pillow. Okay. And if you like, in the morning, first thing when you wake up, you can again write it down, or you can go and stand in front of a mirror and look into your own eyes and say your affirmations there as well, just as kind of another way of reinforcing the good work that you're doing. Okay, so that's the first step. From there, we start the actual process of self-hypnosis, okay? So what you'll do next, as you're laying in bed, basically going to stare up at the ceiling at a spot just above your eyesight, okay? So you're going to keep your chin at its normal level, but you're going to allow your eyes to roll up as high as they'll go, almost like you're looking into your eyebrows, okay? And from there, with your eyes rolled up, staring into your eyebrows, you're going to focus on one particular spot on your ceiling. Now, this is not a comfortable thing. It's not a comfortable position for the eyeballs. It doesn't feel great. It creates a state of fatigue within the eyes, okay, which is what induces the state of hypnosis. So if you try this and you're like, oh, that doesn't feel good, I don't like that, just know that, growth sometimes means discomfort. In fact, growth usually means discomfort, but it's not going to kill you. So once you're staring up at that particular spot in the ceiling, I want you to go ahead and repeat the affirmation to yourself. Okay. Now, your affirmation should use language that uses the words I and or me. Okay. So remember, you're making a suggestion to yourself. So don't say you, right? Because then your mind might get confused about who you is. You are talking to yourself. So you're talking about me. And just go ahead and repeat the affirmation. Okay, so let's say that my affirmation is, I will love myself each day. Okay, so I'm staring up at that spot in the ceiling with my eyes up in my eyebrows, and I start to repeat either out loud or in my head, either is fine. I will love myself each day. I will practice self-love each and every day. Today, I will take every opportunity to love myself. I am learning to love myself more each day. Okay, so you can either repeat the exact same thing over and over again, or you can change up the language. I prefer to change the language a little bit because that just gives your mind more ways to understand it. Also keeps you from getting too bored or from zoning out and starting to think about what you need to do tomorrow right? Or what happened at work today, or whatever it might be. So this is an active practice. Okay. So as you do that, right, as you're repeating that affirmation, you're going to notice your eyes are going heavy and they're starting to close. Keep them open as long as you can. And when it just feels like you can't leave your eyes open any longer, you can go ahead and allow them to close. At that point, I invite you to visualize your affirmation as vividly as possible. Okay. Now, if you have a hard time visualizing, you can imagine it. All right. So imagine that your affirmation has already happened, whatever it is that you want, right? If your affirmation is, I don't know, does someone want to give me an example to work with? Anyone?
There's a tough one that I can think of, which is I am limitless. I can't visualize it.
Okay. I am limitless. All right. I am limitless. So if your affirmation is I am limitless and you're having a hard time visualizing it, I would recommend that you use some symbolic freedom here. Okay. So even though you may know that in this body you will never fly like a bird, what if you visualize yourself with wings, taking off into the sky? What if you visualize yourself surrounded by money, surrounded by friends and people who love you, surrounded, or emitting endless amounts of energy, and joy and freedom. Okay. So you can get creative with the symbolism of that, knowing that even if you're picturing things that couldn't possibly be true because of the limits of the reality that we live in, seeing yourself as a bird with your wings spread wide, floating, on the waves of the air, soaring above the ground below, that can induce within you this state of freedom, this state of power. Okay. And that's ultimately what we want to come to next. So first we're using language, and then we're using visualization or imagination. And through that, we're then coming to emotion. Okay. So as you visualize, you start to tune into the positive emotions that become present in your body from the visualization. Does that make sense? Cool. Can you work with that?
Yeah, I can certainly give it a try. I forgot I have an app that I downloaded at one time that I recorded affirmations into.
Okay.
So
All right.
try it.
That's great. Yeah. Okay. And I want to encourage you to keep working with language and with the visualization and allowing it to change. Okay. So as you're laying there in that state between waking and sleep, you're embellishing this dream of what it is that you want. Okay. So if it is, let's see, one of my affirmations is I give and receive love freely. Okay, so if I'm saying to myself at first, I give and receive love freely. I give and receive love freely. I give and receive love freely until my eyes close. And then I go, I look for opportunities to be more loving, to to share the love within my heart with others each and every day. And when love is offered to me by others, I accept it with gratitude, taking it in, allowing it to grow within me so that I can give more love to others, fueled by the love that's been given to me. Okay, so you're basically just continuing to create more language around it. And as you do that, then you start to see the visuals, right? So as I was doing that just now, I saw myself surrounded by people. I saw myself hugging someone. I saw the opportunity to help someone. And as I did that, I started to feel this warmth within my heart. So as you feel that positive emotion start to come through in your body, then you can start to turn the volume up on that emotion. Okay, and one way that you can do that is by imagining that you have a radio dial or a radio knob, okay, that turns up the volume. So imagine that you're cranking up the volume on that feeling. Now, some people have a hard time accessing their emotions, or they're not quite sure how they experience them in your body. So this might be a practice for some. But I'll ask you, if let's say that you're starting to feel love, with the example that I just gave. Okay, so I'm starting to feel love. Well, how do I experience love? For me, love feels like a warmth within my chest. Okay, so I become aware that I'm feeling that love. I become aware that it feels like a warmth in my chest. And then when I start to dial it up, I imagine that that warmth is spreading and it's emitting from my chest. Okay. And the more I turn it up, the more it grows, the more it spreads, the more of me starts to feel that. And I can imagine it even like emanating beyond my body and touching other people. Does that all make sense so far? Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So we can do a practice of this. And I'll go ahead and guide you through it. So I'll ask each of you to come up with an affirmation that you'd like to practice with. Okay, so everyone call to mind the affirmation that you want to use here and now, and just raise your hand once you have it. I'm waiting on 3 more. Does everyone have their affirmation, or do you need more time? All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So, practicing it now. Remember, you're going to look up into your eyebrows, focusing on one spot at eye level, and starting to take in as much detail as you can about that spot. Doing that for just a few breaths, allowing your breath to grow deeper. And then speaking your mantra in your head, in your mind. Start to repeat it over and over again. Continuing to repeat that mantra in your mind. As your eyes grow heavier, your eyelids start to shrug. Repeating that mantra until your eyes drift closed. And once the eyes drift closed, continuing to repeat the mantra, but in more detail and more embellishment. What is it that you really want? Using the language of here and now. Okay. Speaking as though this thing that you want already exists within your life. Bringing in as much detail as is useful for you. Imagining how it will be when you have this thing that you want. Starting to allow yourself to see it, to imagine it, to visualize it. Daring to allow yourself to dream, to be creative. And as you continue to paint that picture, to create that movie within your mind, start to notice any positive feelings that are associated with this mental image that you've created, with these beautiful words that you're speaking to yourself. And as you name that emotion, notice how you experience it in the body. Begin to notice where it's found within your body, whether it has a temperature or a vibration or any form of movement. And as you really hone in on that feeling, you can go ahead and start to turn up the volume of it, allowing that feeling to grow stronger and stronger within you. Continuing to keep that image, that visual within your mind as you turn up that feeling within your body. Really creating, cementing that association between the feeling and the image and the words. Creating that conviction within. Reminding yourself of what's possible through the power of thought. And as you go through this process each night before you go to sleep, you can continue to do this until you start to drift off to sleep, using this as a tool, a technique to bring yourself into that sleeping consciousness, the sleeping state below consciousness. So inviting you all to slowly come back to the present, closing off the subconscious mind to all but positive ideas and suggestions. Slowly blinking your eyes open when you're ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, eyes open, wide awake. Okay. How was that as a test run? Did anyone have any challenges? Winnie says that was so cool. Awesome. Glad you enjoyed it. Anyone have any questions, challenges? Or was it amazing for each and every one of you? Awesome. Maggie also agrees. So cool. Thank you. Amazing from us. Okay. So if you found that challenging, then I'll just remind you that, any new practice takes practice. And the more that you do this, the more that you practice this on a regular basis, the easier it will become for you. I know sometimes we go to sleep and we're so tired, right? We just feel like we're just gonna go straight into the dream state the second that our head hits the pillow. And so if that's the case for you, what I would recommend doing is still trying to give yourself 2 minutes of this. Okay, not trying, but doing. Actually give yourself 2 minutes of this before you go to sleep. Something's better than nothing. Let's see, we have a question. Is it normal for the eyes to feel a little irritated afterward? Yeah, they might. So I would say if they feel that way, it's just because you were working those eye muscles. So you can give them, maybe a little bit of gentle massage, maybe some eye drops. But typically, if it's before bed, like you can maybe just massage them lightly as you're there imagining. Because that's something that you can do without having to open them again. That's not going to disrupt the process. Yeah, but typically you'll be doing this right before sleep, and so you may not even notice that. Any other questions? So I'll be sending out a recording of my voice leading you through this process, okay? I recommend that you use that for the first week, but that you not become completely reliant on it, right? It's a good guide so that you don't have to sit here and try to read the step-by-step instructions while doing it, because that's not going to be effective. But ultimately, this is your practice and you will be most suggestible to yourself. And so learning to do this on your own without having to listen to a recording is going to be so much more useful to you in the long run. Okay. So let me pull up the presentation slides again. Okay. So you'll receive this as a reminder of the process. You'll also receive a recording. And here's the assignment. Okay, so I would encourage each of you to come up with 1 to 3 affirmations that would improve your life. You've each already come up with 1. So just 2 more. if you choose, unless you're like very, very clear that there's one thing that you're working on right now and that that's where you want to start. That's great. And then practice self-hypnosis every night before you go to sleep. Okay. So as I mentioned before, start with one affirmation and repeat it each night for 1 to 4 weeks until you really start to see meaningful change in that area of your life. And then at that point, you can choose, your second affirmation and begin the process again with that one, followed by your third affirmation, beginning the process again with that one. And as I mentioned before, even if there are multiple things that you want to improve or that you're working on at any given time, I recommend, really just bringing your full awareness to one because of that principle of repetition, right? So you're inducing a trance state with the position of the eyeballs, and we're also inducing a trance state because of repetition. Now, I know this from my own experience. I've done a lot of hypnosis. I've been put into hypnosis quite a bit. And the more often you go into hypnosis, the easier it becomes for you to access that state. So this is why if you're repeating this process night after night, it's going to become easier for you, right? And you're just giving more and more suggestion, more like focus to your suggestion for your mind. Okay. So we talked about 2 techniques here today, right? We talked about reframing negative self-talk, and we talked about using affirmations in self-hypnosis before sleep. Now, if you just do the first practice, you're going to see improvement in your life without a doubt. If you do both of the practices, you're going to see much more improvement without a doubt. And if you want to put the cherry on top, then I would say also do it when you wake up in the morning, whether it's writing it in a journal, writing your affirmation in a journal, or speaking your affirmation to yourself in the mirror while looking in your eyes. Or why not both? Why not all of the above? Right? This is like really adding fuel to the fire, like making sure that you are using every tool at your disposal to create the change that you want to see. Okay. Thank you all for joining me today. Really appreciate you making time this evening, dedicating yourself to this positive work. I'd love to connect with each of you if we're not already connected. So please feel free to find me online. Reach out if you'd like. I do offer one-on-one sessions. So if you're curious about hypnosis, NLP, EFT, coaching, any of the modalities that I work with, you can find out more on my website and you can schedule a free 30-minute consultation with me there. So most of the work that I do with people is helping them to overcome fears and phobias, limiting beliefs, and habits or routines that they want to change. So if there's anything in your life that meets any of those criteria that's been holding you back, let's find time for a chat and see how I can help you through these powerful tools and techniques. With that said, I just want to open the floor for any questions or any final comments. If anyone has anything that they'd like to add.
I do have a quick question, and it may be a little bit different, but every once in a while I find myself waking up kind of in the middle of the night and saying, I got to go back to sleep. And then I'm wide awake. In hypnosis, I'm definitely interested in, I want to learn, I want to use what I've, what you just taught us, and thinking that could be really helpful. But I was just wondering if there's any other thoughts you had around that.
So at a principle level, it's exactly the same. You can use this technique to put yourself back to sleep if you wake up in the middle of the night, okay? In that case, the affirmation that you're stating is going to be one of sleep, right? So you can say things to yourself like, I'm tuning into my body. I'm using my breath to allow myself to relax even more, allowing the gentle waves of my breath to lull me back to sleep. Feeling the bed beneath me as I sink deeper into this soft, comfortable surface. Allowing my mind to quiet, my thoughts to drift by. Right. So again, you're using I language, I and me language, and you're just soothing yourself. You're creating the desire, the state that you're wishing for. I just gave a friend a quick instruction in that the other day. He has a hard time with that. And he said the first time he tried it, it worked like a charm. So
Thank you.
give it a go, Phil. Yeah. Thank you all. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you. So great to see your faces, a few new faces, a few familiar faces. Ooh, amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Kata. Body felt ready for sleep and you started to see visions. I love that. Awesome. Thank you, Maggie, us, and Winnie's left already, but thank you all for your comments.